Hey guys, this is Arjun. I'm a co-founder and CTO at Zujo. Once upon a time, I faced many problems while learning something and I didn't know where to start either. This feeling brought one teacher inside me. I used to, teach many students in my bachelor's when I was pursuing my college. Gradually, it became my hobby, and I used to take lectures, learning sessions, training programs in my last couple of organization. After taking these courses, when a new member joined in the team or organization, we have to take these sessions again. So at that moment I realized that we are doing the same set again and again, and we should find a way to resolve it. So it's a crazy idea, but we started to working on the application, uh, which where I can upload my recorded videos and can share with you know multiple people whom I wanted to teach or whom who are interested in watching my videos. So here it is. It's called Zuzo. Zuzo is a platform where anyone can upload their videos, series, courses, learning programs, and even they can schedule the live learning sessions and many more. It solves the unique problem of a structured way to learn the things and connect with your audience. It provides the functionality of creating video faster and uh, making sure that every content of your belongs to you. Apart from that, to know more about Zuzu, you can go on our website zuzu.co, and don't forget to check our partner program because we are looking for many educators, artists, and influencers across the world. Now let's come to the main point. Uh, this course has been designed for people who never tried Next.js but wanted to pursue with the Next.js or wanted to learn it. This is a basic crash course or Next.js 101. Hello guys, let's get started with the Next.js 101. This code had been designed for the developers who are just starting with the Next.js. You'll require some fundamental knowledge about the Node.js and React.js. This course is not designed for the developer who are already started with the Next.js and are wanted to explore more about it. But this is kind of a crash course where it introduced the Next.js concepts. So let's understand how it had been designed. In the first part, we'll explain that why you actually required Node Next.js, and then we'll explore navigation between the pages. We'll add some assets, metadata, and the CSS in the project, and then after we'll actually move further to the advanced concepts such as how to do a pre-rendering, how to fetch the data, how to deal with the dynamic routes, and how to design the APIs or API routes. Next.js is basically abstraction of the React.js for the production, right? It provides like many functionality where you can automate everything and not everything but most of the thing, and you can reduce your manual work. So that is how I define the Next.js. It basically provides like most of the functionalities which could be very very helpful when it comes to the production, performance, SEO, and the optimization. Now let's compare Next.js like from the uh, with the React.js from the scratch, and let's basically focus on the parameters like why we preferred the Next.js over the React.js from the scratch, right? So the first thing is basically to deal with the bundlers. The bundlers are, the kind of frameworks which converts your React, Angular, SAS, or high-level programming stuff into the raw files or bundles, which could be handled by the browser, such as HTML, JavaScript, CSS, images, and other raw files, right? The problem with the bundler is like it requires high learning curve, and it also requires very very technical knowledge about like how it works and how it can be integrate with the other loaders as well, right? So that is the first problem with the React.js from the scratch to deal with bundlers. There are many available bundlers are there. Webpack, Rollup, Parcel. Webpack is the most famous, and most of the time everyone used to work with it. Another problem is transcompilers such as Babel. Babel is basically a transcompiler which transfer your code into the EMAScript 2050, like 2050, supported by the most of the browsers. So it is like basically it required for the backward compatibility, like where when you wanted to use the latest syntax of JavaScript, but it wasn't supported by all the browsers, so you'll require the Babel, which transcode your code into the backward compatibility. Apart from that, you'll require client-side rendering, server-side rendering, and the static side generation uh, based on the uh, pages you wanted to serve. Like for example, the Angular and the React, as we all know, like are very good with the client-side rendering. Like what it does, basically, it basically load the single route file from the index.html, and then it inject the content via JavaScript, right? Most of the time. So that's why we call it single page application. Most of the things had been executed over here, or most of the routing had been done, and most of the code had been loaded dynamically by the JavaScript, or at the end of the day, it had been injected by the DOM. While server-side rendering is basically the advanced way to imitate the old PHP way. Like we used to work with the PHP where we hardbound our data with the page itself. So server-side rendering is the same thing. What it does, it basically render the whole page onto the server side and then send the pure HTML file on the client side, and then like it communicate via events and virtual DOM, right, which would be helpful at the end of the day. While static site generation is like kind of pre-rendering all of your data into the HTML and store it anywhere on the server or the cloud, and then that statically host it. So basically everything is pre-rendered over there into the HTML file, and you just have to send the HTML file to the browser, and it will show all the data. With the multiple use cases, you'll require combination of the multiple things. Like sometimes you will require client-side rendering if you're dealing with the uh, the consoles or like authenticated routes, right? While you'll also require static site generators if you're dealing with the completely static data, right? The front-end website or static website. Well, when you're dealing with the dynamic data, you'll also require the server-side rendering because of the performance optimization and the SEO purpose. With the React, it would be very difficult to handle three of this at the same time. as well as it will require the whole another learning curve to support all of them, right? Apart from that, you'll also require your application to connect with the data, right? Such as like file system, JSON data, like API routers or third-party APIs, or basically serverless functions, right? So uh, uh, with this from the scratch, you have to kind of design. You have to deal with the when you wanted to hydrate your pages with the data, you have to deal with the another kind of logic, and you have to communicate with the server, and you have to write you know another kind of code over there to connect your data, which somewhere will require kind of efforts, and have to maintain the major standards over here as well. Apart from that, last but not least, you'll require performance for the ACU, right? Most of the time, with the dynamic data as well, we when the data is updating too much, we have to render it on the browser as fast as possible, right, to make sure that our first content would be like painful in terms of the SEO or search engine optimization. To accomplish this, you have to deal with the many things when you're dealing with the React.js from the scratch, and you have to you know optimize it step by step. There isn't any automation available. It would be like completely manual efforts. Now let's compare this with the Next.js, right? So what Next.js provide is basically it provides the abstraction around the React.js. It's kind of wrapper. Like it supports many functionalities which can overcome the last five problems I defined. For example, it supports page-based routing and dynamic routing as well. So, like for example, if you wanted to use you know uh, simple file system routing, like whatever the file you'll written over there, it will create the simple routing based on those files. So you don't have to deal with the logic, or you don't have to write another code for it. It supports per page uh, static generation, client side rendering, and the server side rendering. So you have fully control over here. You can define per page, like do you want it to like statically generate this file? Do you want it to serve it via client side rendering, or do you want it to run it via SSR, right? It also supports automatic code splitting, so you don't have to deal with the webpack, you don't have to deal with the barbell over here. Next.js in the background would make sure that these things would be handled with S, and you don't have to deal with any kind of manual efforts. It also supports prefetching with the client-side routing. So when you know wanted to prefetch the routes, or you wanted to get the data or get the pages like fetched before it had been requested in the browser. So Next.js will handle all this stuff. Uh, it has built-in support for the CSS, SAS, and CSS in JavaScript. In the development environment, it supports fast refresh, and it also supports, APIs within the framework or within the same project, as well as API routes, where you can hydrate the data from the APIs in your page itself via routing, right? So these are the basic functionality. We'll like explore all of this functionality in next couple of episodes, and we'll get into the each and every portion over here. Now let's explore the basic example. Uh, let's try to uh, or get our hands dirty with some basic code. What I did over here is I created this basic starter code, which you can find from my repository Zujo Next.js 101. I'll attach the link into the description, and what you can do is like you can get into this folder 01 Zujo Next.js 101 starter. So what we'll do basically, we'll basically set up a basic Next.js application, and we'll play with the code. So to do the setup, you have to copy uh, this line, and you have to paste it where you want to create the project. So I already created folder in my PC, and you have to just hit the enter. Before hitting the enter, you'll require Node.js and the React.js installed, as well as you'll require the npm installed, or yarn if you are using the yarn, right? Okay. So what? Let me explain the command while it is executing. So what it does basically, it uses the npm and especially npx, and it uses this particular template, create next app, and uh, while it will create this particular project over here, 01 Zujo Next.js 101 starter, and it will set up, it will clone the whole project, and then it will install all the dependency as well. And to provide the example over here, the link I had declared over here, it will take the code from that particular link. So basically, in short, it will clone the code, it will set up the Next.js for us, and it will also take care of the dependencies. It might take a couple of minutes based on your internet connection and the configuration of your PC. Okay, it's done now. After after installing all the dependency and setting up it, as you can see over here, uh, there's a several commands which we can prefer. So basically, to run this project into the development, we have to run like npm run dev or run yarn dev if you're using yarn, npm run build for the production build, and npm start to check the production build. Before that, what we'll do, we'll get into the project 01 to the Next.js 101 starter, and then we'll open it under the code editor, VS Code, and we'll explore the basic structure of the project, like how it, what is the directory structure, and basically how it had been standardly defined. So it includes like packet.json file basically, which had been used for basic dependency management. We have three major dependency: Next, React, and React DOM. Apart from that, it includes like public folder to host the statically generated file, and it basically includes one another folder which is the most important part of the Next.js, called the pages. And over here you can see like two files, home.js and index.js. So Next.js is familiar for its file based routing. What it does basically, it will convert this files into the directly routing. For example, when you run this code, index.js would be served directly to the slash route, and home.js would be served to slash home route. So let's not wait further. Let's run this project. I'm executing yarn dev and triggering the command next dev. Right. It will first compile the code. It will create one dot next folder, and then it will serve the files from that particular folder to the local host. As you can see over here, this folder had been created to handle the cache for the development and the packages and all those stuffs. Right? We can open the link. Until and unless the compiler had been done, it wouldn't show anything. We have to wait for the compilation to complete. Okay, has been compiled successfully, and you can see the page rendered over here. So what I did is, like, I tweaked some of the portion of this, the basic example, and I created multiple cards over here. So here is the basic example of the index.js. As I also already had created another route, such as home.js. You can see over here, I had returned the basic testing. Let me show you how routing works. So if I'll type /home over here, it will directly redirect to that particular page. So over here, whatever the component you'll by default export would be considered as your the root component for that particular route, right? And if you haven't specified anything over here, it will by default use the static routing. Like, it would generate files statically and then route it via JavaScript, right? And this home code, what I did is, I had basically written the code of grid and the cards. I added some JavaScript from the actual example, and just written the whole part, as you can see over here. To just try it out, what we can do is, like, we can basically change this any of the portion over here, and we can check that is it dynamically reflecting over here in the development environment or not. So basically, I'm changing learn about Zujo to get started with Zujo. So get started with Zujo, right? So what it does on fly, it will compile the code again, and then will reflect over here on the browser. So as you can see, the dynamic loading over here. Get started with Zujo. Hello everyone. In this particular episode, we are going to learn about navigating in between the pages. Basically, when we are working with the React.js from the scratch, we used to work with the React router, right? Switching in between the multiple group of pages, or like maintaining the routes. While in the Next.js, it is completely simple enough to understand how navigation works. So let's not waste the time. Let's directly start with uh, this code lib. So what I did is, this 02 Next.js navigate in between pages, I already had uh, cloned it, and I already had started the server as well. So let's just open it on the browser, and let's check it out what it includes. So over here, the same four links are available, which directly navigated to another routes, while I created this route within, which is the first post, right? When I click on it, it will redirect to this particular page, post slash first post, and then we can move back to home. So let's first explore this particular code, how it is working, and then we'll try to add another post as well. So to navigate in between the route, I had used a component named link. So it is the inbuilt component provided by next slash link package. It basically helps you to maintain the navigation as well as the history and many other things as well in the Next.js. So basically, if you just wanted to navigate it, you have to write, href and the route of your file, which would be abstract by end of the day. And if you wanted to style it, then you can use one icon tag over within the component as a child component, and you can give the class name as I did already, right? Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's add one more page over here and name it as second post .js, and let's copy the code from first post and paste it over here, and let me change the name of the post as well. Second post, and then back to home. So as you can see over here, again what I did is basically I defined the link component with the slash route, which would at the end of the day navigate back to the index.js. So basically the root route we are defining over there. Okay, now let me add the same post in the index.js as well, so we can easily navigate over here. Second, and to basically run this route, we have to restart the server again. So this routing is a client-side routing, which I had defined over here with the link, and link component had been designed to navigate on the client side using the Next.js. Okay, let's refresh the page. As you can see, there is a first post and the second post. When I click on the second post, it is opening the second post. You might have realized that at the first time it is basically slow. On the second time it is faster enough. The reason behind it, because Next.js by default doesn't pre-render the content. While you click on it, it would be rendered, and then after it would be pre-rendered by automatically. So it will store this particular page to your client memory. Now let's do one experiment over here to basically to check it out that is it a client-side routing or not, or basically the routing had been performed by the JavaScript or the browser. To check it out, there is a tweak over here. What you can do is basically, for example, if you change the background color of this page, for example, background color, and I'm defining it as a yellow. Okay, as you can see over here, the whole page is in yellow, and if you go back to the home, it would remain same. With this, you can basically prove that it is a client-side routing or routing by the JavaScript, because the whole DOM had not been changed to do the routing part, and the JavaScript by itself perform the routing and change of the URL as well. Hey guys, in this episode, we are going to learn about how to add assets, metadata, and CSS in the Next.js project. We'll directly start with the code lab in this lesson. What I did is I had set up the basic project over here. It includes multiple CSS files, such as I created one styles folder. I added global.css and I added utils.module.css. Apart from that, I created one component folder and added layout.module.css. So you might not be aware with this dot module logic, right? So in Next.js, you have to follow the pattern of file name while adding the CSS. So basically, you must follow .module.css format for each and every CSS, apart from the global.css, which is kind of a global CSS we are using. So now, while running this project, it had been uh, you know rendered as you can see over here, like hello, myself Arjun Kawa, and I'm a co-founder of at Zujo. You can contact me. What I wanted to do is, like, I wanted to define header and footer over here, and I wanted to add one image in this particular page. So let's get started. So to add the header and footer, I have to define one component called layout.js. So that's why I created this component, and this is the basic, style sheet for that particular component. So let's add it first. Layout dot js. And let me copy the basic syntax from any of the component. Move this code and rename it as a layout. Now the thing is, layout will have only one component or one argument over here, which would be props as a children, right? So let's define like three tags over here. The one is, let's first add the div tag and give it as a style modular. We can styles container basically, and we land this particular div. To import this style, we have to write such as import styles from layout, sorry, layout dot module dot css. Okay, let me define add the parenthesis over here, and then let me define three tags. First, header. Second, main for the children, of course. And third, footer for the footer purpose. So I'll just write it down for now here. Header and footer. Might be some mistake. Okay, let's import this function in our index file, right? Import layout from components slash layout, and then just add, let's just add this layout as a root tag in the layout file. There might be an error over here again. Unterminated JSX. Let me restart the server. Okay, we might have problem with the code. Forget to close any of the tag over here. I'm not able to find which one. Okay, I could write it as this. Sorry, my bad. Okay, here we are. As you can see, header and footer is there. I already had defined the styles of header over here, so it had been defined as a center, and this content had been centered by the container itself. So let's add one image over here. Okay, what I did is basically I had added one images folder over here, and I imported one of the profile of mine. What I'll do, I'll just show that particular image over here. Images profile.jpg. Okay, let's see how it had been reflected. You can see it had been reflected over here, but it's in the full width, so we might have to deal with the width somewhere. But let's not do it right now. We'll add some CSS later on. Okay, so far what we did is we had basically added imported some CSS and just added the layout over here. So we added one asset and we added the layout. Now let's add some metadata over here. So to add the metadata, you have to define a head tag. So head is basically provided by Next itself. It is the package import head from next slash head, right? Over here what you can do is like you can add multiple meta tags. For example, these are the example of the meta tags. For example, if I wanted to edit, I'll copy from here and then I'll paste it over there. And one thing I have to do is like I have to end this tag, right? Because the React.js every tag must add, and I'll change as June. So okay. Apart from that, you can add title as well over here, or you can add other multiple tags as well, such as Twitter card or something like that. Now it will go through it will inspect the elements. You'll able to see the head tag over here, right? And as you can see, all the tags had been defined already, which we had added. Now this layout.module.css we had used for one particular module only, right? Now what about if we wanted to define the global CSS such as this? To add this, we have to use one internal component of the Next.js which called underscore app.js. It has the same functionality of f.js, the we use for the routing basically, but what it does, it abstract your routing the component, or it would call itself before each and every page of the Next.js rendered, right? So let's first import global.css over here. Now let's define the component. Let's copy some code, paste it over here, name it as app, and let's end it. Now we have to define two major things over here. It would take two major argument. One is component and another is page props, right? And you can return it as this. There might be some mistake over here. Here it is. Okay, here it is. Component. Yes. Now if you run the project, you can see that this global.css file would be applied to the components. Okay, let's wait for the compilation and then we'll restart it. Compile it successfully. Okay, as you can see, the fonts had been changed automatically, and it reflected that global.css had been applied over here. Okay, now let me style it very well. I'll come back and I'll automatically add some style tags and then I'll show it. Hi. So I added some styles over here. As you can see, I covered the whole image by the basic style set and the text and all those stuff. You can find this code on the same repository with the files of CSS as well. Thank you for watching. We'll meet again in the next episode. Hey guys, in this episode, we are going to learn about pre-rendering and the data fetching in the Next.js. Before starting, we have to understand this concept, like what is the pre-rendering at the end of the day. And before understanding the pre-rendering, we have to understand the hydration in the React app. So let me show you the basic example of hydration. So what I did is I ran the same last demo of the Next.js. As you can see over here, everything had been loaded, and then JavaScript itself, inject styling and all those stuffs into the DOM. With that, what I did is I basically started one create React script server. So it is the basic plain React.js from the scratch server, and this one is Next.js server, right? So why I did that? Because by default Next.js prefers the pre-rendering or you know the hydration steps. So what it does, it basically uh, uh, take the HTML from the server, display it, and then when page is rendered, it basically hydrate the style set and all other stuffs, CSS, JavaScript, and it basically render the page, right? While from the scratch, it won't does that. It basically don't pre-render anything. Everything had been done by the JavaScript only. To check the to understand this difference, what we have to do is like I'll just disable the JavaScript over here using command shift P, disable JavaScript, and I'll reload the page. As you can see, the only HTML had been rendered over here, right? Nothing else, because by default it had been pre-rendered, right? And the HTML and all those stuff had been given from the Next.js server to the client, while all the CSS had not been injected yet, because it needs to be injected via JavaScript, right? And if we'll do the same thing over here, disabling the JavaScript and refreshing the page, he'll get the message, you need to enable the JavaScript to run this app. So that is the whole difference, right? Pre-rendering means to get the HTML before rendering the whole page interactively, right? Pre-rendering would help you to get better SEO, and it would also help you to improve the performance of the application, because you don't need to wait for the JavaScript to load before getting the HTML and the CSS. I hope understood the same thing. Let me enable JavaScript again and run the same thing. So as you can see, JavaScript had rendered everything, and let me do the same thing over here. So this basically called as a hydration, right? So let's understand about it in context of the pre-rendering. So as I said, pre-rendering and versus no pre-rendering is basically when you're pre-rendering, it would automatically pre-render your HTML and it would display on the screen. When the JS loads, it would hydrate your components, would be initialized by the React.js, and app will become the interactive. While if you are not using the pre-rendering, app would not be rendered. When JavaScript would load, everything would be initialized, and then your app would be interactive, right? So this is the basic difference in between the pre-rendering and the no pre-rendering. There are majorly two type of pre-rendering available in the Next.js. The first is static generation, another is server-side rendering. Static generation is basically you will generate the HTML on the build time, and will use it each with the each request. So basically there wouldn't be any kind of data fetching or third party uh, call would be done over here. What Next.js does on the build process, it will fetch the data, and it would build the whole page with the data itself, right? And then it would be reused for the each request and statically be generated. Now, server-side rendering is basically HTML would be generated with each request, right? When the user request uh, for the page, and what it does, each time server would generate the HTML and send it to the client, right? So this would be the basic step. So with each user, the HTML would be generated, right? So these are the two basic forms of the pre-rendering. Apart from that, what you can do with the Next.js is like you can choose like which page you wanted to pre-render with which kind of the method available. For example, the page A can be pre-rendered by static generation, page B can be pre-rendered by the server-side rendering, page C would be same, and page D with the static generation. So you'll have the whole control over your application, that which page needs to be statically generated, pre-rendered with the data, which page needs to be like server side rendered, so on and so forth, right? Now let me explain in which case you should use static generation and in which case you should use server side rendering. So for example, if you are dealing with the marketing pages, blog posts, like e-commerce product listing or help and documentation, this data wouldn't be kind of too dynamic. Like it wouldn't change within the hours, seconds or milliseconds, right? So you should always use static generation in such kind of cases, while uh, server side rendering, it would be when you cannot predict the request ahead of the time. For example, you cannot predict the data uh, you need to show on the page or you need to display on the page ahead of the time. You should always use static side rendering, sorry, server side rendering. Now there is another way as well, like you can also uh, generate static files with and without data. So with data would be, you know, kind of you'll fetch the external data with the page when Next.js is building the app for the production. It will fetch the external data and then HTML would be generated after fetching the data. Well, without data, on the next build, the HTML would be directly generated. It wouldn't be fetched. Like so, if you wanted to do the static generation with the data, what you have to do is you have to, like in the last example, as we declared the home function, right, for the page. So you just have to add another function over here called get static props. What it does, basically, it hydrate the props or on the it would sense, it would tell the Next.js that this page would require the external dependency, and you can fetch the data over here either from the file system, API, DB, whatever you wanted to do, and then you'll return into this format of props, and it would be directly available in this particular props, right? So in this way you can do the static generation of the data. Now uh, let's do the code lab, and let's understand like how it would work while working with the Next.js. So what I did is basically I again cloned the 04, this particular repository, uh, 04 Next.js 101 pre-rendering and data fetching. I cloned it, and if you can start with the last demo as well, or you can get the whole code from here. So what I did is like I basically set up some of the functions over here. I'll explain it one by one that what I changed from the last version of the code, right? Okay, let me start. So first what I did is like I added one you know the package called gray matter. Why I did it? Because with this I added some posts. So this basically, this demo is designed for the simple block, to list down the simple blocks from the this .md files, right? So I created the post folder, and then I added two files over here. What is Zujo.md, and I did some content over here, and then why we choose the Next.js, right? Now uh, I also declared another folder called lib, and I added one file called posts.js. What I did over here is basically I read the post directory using fs.read directory sync, and then I just generated the ID of that particular post, I just read the name of the post and declared it as the ID. And then what I did is I read the whole content from that particular file in the UTF-8 format, so basically in the text. And then, as I said, I used this package called graymatter. What it does basically, it will convert your string, this kind of string, into this kind of JSON object, and it is very faster way to do this. So to just list down my post, I read the whole list of the post and then convert it into the JSON file, which would return basically ID of that particular post, title, and the slug. Right. So this is the basic thing I did. Right now, then I also sorted some of the data over here by the date to make sure that the most recent post would be on the top. Now let me show you like how I can basically list down this post in my index file. So basically on the root. So I wanted to add the listing of blocks over here. What I did is like I just declared like some of the tags. I'll write down blocks over here, and then I declared like one of the list elements. Okay, what I did over here is basically I had imported the get sorted post data from the post.js functions, right? And then I just called the function and the function of get static props, right? And return the all post data. So this data would be available in this component via props when it had been built by the Next.js. So what I'll do next, I'll just use this data and I'll just list it down the post. So all post data dot map, and then ID, slug, and title, right? And then I'll just return one single li tag with the key ID, and to break down the ID break ID break slug break and title break. Okay, let's just check out our page. So here it is. It had been reflected same as it had listed down the blocks, its ID, its slug, and its uh, title. Sorry, we might be missing something over here. It'll be title and slug. Title, slug, and the ID. Yes, it is title, slug, and ID, which we had displayed. So here it is. So what we did in the whole video is we basically provided we just hydrated the data into the page and listed down over here. So what it'll do, it will basically, before rendering the page or before building the Next.js static file, static generation, what Next.js will do, it will basically fetch this data and would generate the static HTML files for the same. Okay, thank you for watching this video. We'll meet in the next episode. Hey guys, in this episode we are going to learn about the dynamic routes. So let's first understand that how dynamic routes works at the end of the day in the Next.js. So if you wanted to statically generate the page called, for example, /post/id, on the URL of slash post slash ID, where ID would be the dynamic part. So you have to create one page, uh, one folder inside the pages folder named posts as described over here, and then you have to create a file with brackets around such as id.js, right? Whatever the parameter you'll pass over here would be whatever the name you will put across those brackets, such as either id or slug, the same parameter you can get from the Next.js. The fundamental three rules are there. Before doing this, your page must contain a React component with the render uh, method for this particular page. It must contain get static paths, which returns the array of possible values of the ID. So basically, why it is required, we'll see it in the next slide. And get static props, which fetches the necessary data for the posts with the ID. Basically, this third method, we deal with the same thing in the last episode, where we fed some data and headed it into the React component. Okay, now let's understand this method get static paths. What it does basically, this is the simple syntax of the get static paths. Uh, it returns the array of the paths, right? And it also have another flag, uh, which is return is basically uh, true or false. True or false means that fallback. It also contains a fallback property, which is boolean. So if it would be true, Next.js by default would handle the fallback of that particular page. If it would be false, then Next.js would redirect to the 404 page. Now, this method is basically used by the Next.js to get the possible IDs of that particular dynamic data, and on the build time generate the pages for the same and look through it, and then fetches the data from the get static props and hide it into the multiple pages, right? So this method is basically kind of, it provides the index of like how many possibilities of the IDs are there. So on the build process, or on the build time, Next.js can get the data like it needs to be generated like around 100 page or 1000 page based on the data available. Okay. Uh, Before moving further, uh, let's uh, let's do the same thing with our last demo. What we did last time was we just listed down the uh, number of blocks over there, right? So let's generate the static pages from that data of the blocks. Okay. Okay. This is the same project I had deal with the last time, and I also had updated, the copy of the project, the final version on the same GitHub repository. You'll find out the link into the description. So let me explain how many changes I did compared to the last time, right? So first of all, what I did is I basically added this folder, as I said earlier, posts, and I added one file, uh, id.js with the brackets, right? What it does basically, this page will show the data or content of the that particular block on another page, and Next.js will generate the static files from it, right? I'll explain the code, later on. Before that, let me explain two methods over here. Get static props is the same method we deal with the last, when it's the same method where we fed the data and then headed it into the post component. While To generate the paging statically, what I did is I created another method called get all post IDs, right? This method I defined in the library post.js, and what it does basically, it read all the files and uh, just sends the name of the the file as a array to the uh, uh, to the calling method, right? So over here it just return the array of the IDs, and then I pass the array of the IDs into the props. Sorry, it returns the paths of that particular file, and then I just return the paths over here, and then define fallback equal to false, which defines that if uh, Next.js would not be able to find the uh, ID or content of that particular file, it will show the 404 page, right? Apart from that, what I did is basically I declared one another method over here, which is get static props, right? uh, from the uh, from the ID of that particular post. So this method would basically fetch the data from the ID. So for that, what I did is I declared get post data method in a same post.js file. Here it is, which takes the ID as input and which will convert the whole markdown of the blogs we written last time, this blogs, into the HTML, right? So it uses the remark plugin. So basically, I installed two major plugins over here, remark and the remark HTML. These are the Node.js modules, which basically converts your markup files into the HTML files, right? So to convert this content basically into the HTML, I did the same thing. So what it will do, it will basically take the ID as input, it will read the file content, and then it will read some metadata using meter, which we used last time, and uh, using that uh, you know content from the meter, it will process that particular data and would generate HTML from it, right? So I just uh, exported remark uh, over here and remark HTML to make sure that data would be generated into HTML format. And then I just return the ID, meta data such as title and slug, and the content HTML, right? Over here. Now let me show you uh, the final output before exploring this post function. Okay, as you can see over here, last time we just printed out title, slug, and the date. This time in the index.js, I just added some styles over here, and then I added like link reference, dynamic link reference such as post slash ID. Like I used the same ID from the old post data, and then I used one another component called date, right? From the um, from the component. So I declared this component, and I just used that fns npm package to the convert the plain date into the ISO format, right? And show it in a better way, in a human readable way, basically. So this function I used over here, it's just the helper function to display the date. So as you can see, we have now list of blogs with the links and when it had been published. When I click on it, uh, Next.js will generate the HTML on fly. Basically, it doesn't show any of the data right now because I just specified the basic style sheets over here, but I just not printed the data over here, or like not injected into the component. So what I'll do, one by one, I'll inject the data into the component and we'll see the reflection over here. So first I'll set the title, meta title, and we'll check it out, like how it is reflected. As you can see, meta title had been changed by choose Next.js, and then I'll add the same title, the post title over here, and as you can see, we added the post title as well. Now we have to import the date component to show the date with the date string. Now I'll show the date with post data dot date. I think I just have to check it out, like which property of date is there. Okay, it's just simple date, right? So okay, here it is. Okay, as you can see, we displayed the date. Now the major part is to display uh, the content of the post of HTML. So I used dangerously set inner HTML function or property of the React.js to display the HTML. I'll just uh, copy the property from the function itself, and I'll just paste it down over here. Okay, let's see the reflection. Okay, here we are. As you can see, what we did over here in this component is basically uh, with the get static props, we injected uh, that block data into this page component. While using this particular method of get static paths, Next.js had generated the multiple uh, pages on the build time. And if we'll click on this, what is Zujo, it will also, there might be some issue with this. I don't know. Let me refresh it. Let me click on what is Zujo. Yes, here we are. Zujo is a independent educator. And why to choose Next.js? Here we are to choose next. The delay we are facing over here is the time server is taking in the development environment, the host to reflect the data over here. If you are uh, if you're doing the same thing in the production, it might not you know have the same kind of delay over there. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching. We'll meet in the next episode. Hey guys, in this episode we are going to create one simple API in the Next.js. Uh, the goal is to understand that how can we create the APIs. I'll be not covering how to call it and use it into your components because it might not be in the context of this particular course, because you might require some advanced knowledge about the Express.js and the Node.js to handle such kind of things. I might cover it into the more advanced course in the future. For now, let's just directly explore how we can add the API in the Next.js. So this is the basic code lab I created. uh, 06 next 101 API routes. I already cloned it over here, And what I did is basically I just created one folder of API in the pages folder, and whatever the name of the file you'll add over here would become your route for the API. For example, if I wanted to call uh, localhost 3000 slash API slash user, and I wanted to return JSON over there, what you should do, you should create the same file name user.js, and you should export anonymous function which can return the user data. So I did the same thing. There are two major parameters over here: request and the response. Request would be used for to get the uh, caller information, parameters, and all those stuffs. Respond would be used to send the respond again to the uh, browser or client, right? So let's just check it out how this API would respond in the browser. So what I'll do, I'll open localhost 3000 slash API slash user. Okay, as you can see, this is simple get API route we created, and it returned all the data we just needed over here with this API. So API routes are basically useful when you wanted to directly integrate your serverless functions, or database calls, or you wanted to fetch the data from third party services within your application, and you just don't wanted to use the client side fetching. Rather than that, you wanted to perform such kind of tweaks over the data, or you wanted to make sure that it would be either authenticated or not authenticated, or any kind of logic you wanted to pursue with the API routes. It could be the same. uh, uh, Apart from that, API would be useful to generate the SSR routes as well, right? It could be again, in not in the beginning context of the Next.js. It might require some knowledge about the SSR with the Node.js. So I'll not cover it in this course, but uh, it would majorly help you to tweak the data before you render the page, right? Okay, I think that's it for the API routes we need to explore. In the next episode, we'll learn about the deployment of the Next.js project. What we'll do, we'll deploy it on the Vercel, and I'll just show you the basic procedure. Thank you for watching this episode. In this episode, we are going to learn about how to deploy the project on Vercel. Vercel is a company. They are maintaining the Next.js, and they are the creator of the Next.js as well. So let's get started. So what I did first is, like, I'm going to import my whole repository over here by creating the project, and then it will show me the number of projects over here. So I'll take the last one and click on the continue to import the project. Okay, then I just have to name it. I'll keep the name Zujo next day 101, and then you can also uh, you know take another examples over here. Like, you can host so many frameworks uh, on the Vercel as well. Apart from that, you can set other commands for the build, as well as you can set the environment variables if you wanted to. And for now, we don't need anything else. So I'm just clicking on the deploy. What it will do, it says that there is already available project of Zujo Next.js 101. So I just have to change the name. So let me change the name to Zujo Next.js. Okay, here we are. So it created deployment, and what Vercel will do then after, it will allocate one instance to this project, and then it will install the dependency of our project. And once it will be done, uh, it will notify us over here that your repository had been deployed over the Next.js server. Okay, let's wait for some time. Okay, here we are. Finally, we did it. Let's open the project and check it out. Okay, here we are. Zujo Next.js.vercel.app, and as you can see, everything had been statically bound, and everything has been completely built and then pre-rendered over here. You can also check it out that every link is working or not. For example, this external links, yes, it is working fine. Okay, that's it from my end, guys. This is the final episode, and hope you enjoyed the whole course. This course had been specially designed for the beginners, as I said earlier as well. And in the meantime, we are also going to design multiple courses on the Zujo.co, and our you can access those courses from Zujo.co website. Apart from that, you can also download our Android and iOS application to access the courses and the videos. Okay. Apart from that, we're also looking for the independent creators in our Zujo.co. Zujo.co is basically uh, kind of a platform where any educator can upload their courses and can get the monetization as well. Apart from that, they can start their learning programs as well. For example, pre-recorded videos, live lectures, live sessions on that particular courses. And the amazing part is you can earn from it as well. So please contact us, please download the application and contact us if you are really wanted to part of this application or this site. Thank you.